The movements occur in the sagittal plane and the frontal axis. The hands, wrist, and torso are isolated during the whole movement. In the beginning position, the metacarpals are isolated in a flexed position. The carpals are isolated in an extended position. The radial ulnar joint is pronated. The elbow joint is flexed. The glenohumeral joint is flexed at 90 degrees. The scapula is inward rotated and protracted. During the eccentric contraction of the squat, the hips are in a flexed position, the knees are flexed, the ankles are in dorsiflexion. During the concentric contraction of the overhead press, the hands are still isolated in flexion, the wrists are isolated in extension, the radial ulnar joint stays pronated, the elbow joint extends, the glenohumeral joint is flexed, the scapula is elevated and externally rotated. During the eccentric contraction of the overhead press, the hands are still isolated in flexion, the wrists are isolated in extension, the radial ulnar joint stays pronated, the elbow flexes, the glenohumeral joint extends to 100-degree flexion to 90-degree flexion, and the scapula inwardly rotates and protracts. During the concentric contraction of the squat, the hips extend, the knees extend, and the ankles plantar flex. During the eccentric and concentric contractions, the agonist muscles at the hip include the gluteus maximus, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and biceps femoris. The agonist muscles at the knee include the rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, vastus lateralis, and the agonist muscles at the ankle include the gastrocnemius and the soleus. This is the lateral view of the concentric contraction of the overhead press. During the eccentric and concentric contractions of the overhead press, the agonist muscles of the wrist and hand include the MCP, the PIP flexors, the flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, palmaris longus, flexor digitorum profundus, flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor pollicis longus. The agonist muscles at the elbow joint include the tricep brachii and the anconeus. The agonist muscles of the shoulder joint include the pectoralis major, the anterior deltoid, the coracore brachialis, and the biceps brachii. The antagonist muscles of the shoulder girdle include the trapezius, the levator scapulae, and the serratus anterior.